Why is he holding my finger like he already knows I am his father? The alpha's voice cut through the delivery room just as I opened my eyes. A white ceiling blurred above me. Lamps burned with merciless brightness, turning every shadow sharp. My lungs refused to fill properly. Pain seized my lower body in violent waves, each contraction dragging a broken sound from my throat. Something warm rested against my chest. A newborn. His tiny hand had closed around the index finger of the man standing beside the bed. The stranger was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in black despite the blood staining his cuff. His silver-gray eyes held no tenderness. He stared at the infant as though the child had presented evidence against him. Behind him stood another man with the same severe features, though his expression was far less controlled. Anger tightened his jaw. A scar crossed one eyebrow, lending his handsome face a dangerous edge. Twins, I realized. Not the babies. The men. What? My voice cracked. I swallowed against a throat scraped raw. Where am I? The second man gave a humorless laugh. Still performing, Lucian? Lucian. The name struck something deep inside my skull. Images flashed without warning. A grand staircase, shattered glass. A man-shaped silhouette in pale blue. Two men turning away while someone begged them to listen. Then another contraction tore through me. I screamed. A masked physician leaned between my knees. The second child is in distress. His heartbeat is falling. Second child? I looked down at the infant against me. Dark hair lay damp across his small head. His cheeks were flushed from crying, but he had gone quiet while clutching the alpha's finger. My body tightened again. The physician reached toward a silver tray. Prepare the injection. My gaze snapped to the syringe in his hand. The liquid was cloudy. Wrong. I did not know how I had arrived here, why I was in another man's body, or how a male body had just given birth. But I knew medicine. I had spent 6 years in emergency wards reading labels while people bled beneath my hands. That dosage is too high, I gasped. The physician froze. The scarred alpha stepped forward. What new trick is this? Check the vial. I fought to keep my words steady. The concentration, it will slow my heart and suppress the baby's respiration. The doctor's eyes shifted toward the label. For one brief second, fear moved across his face. The calmer alpha noticed. Read it aloud, he ordered. My lord, there is no time. Read it. The room changed. Servants stopped moving. Even the air seemed to pull away from him. The physician's fingers trembled. 20 milligrams per milliliter. A nurse beside him went pale. The prescribed solution is 5. The scarred alpha grabbed the doctor by the collar. You nearly killed them. No, the physician's voice collapsed into panic. The vial must have been switched. Another spasm crushed through me before anyone could respond. The infant on my chest began to cry. Take him, I begged. The silver-eyed alpha hesitated. You wanted these children, he said, each word stripped of mercy. You destroyed everyone around you to get them. I don't know what you're talking about. The scar man's grip tightened around the doctor. Do not insult us. A monitor shrieked. The second baby's heartbeat stumbled. Training took over where terror failed me. Turn me onto my left side. I ordered. Oxygen. Now, do not give me anything until the vial is tested. Nobody moved. I looked directly at the silver-eyed alpha. You can hate me after your son is breathing. Something flickered in his gaze. He stepped forward, slid one arm beneath my shoulders, and turned me with surprising care. A nurse fitted an oxygen mask over my face. The physician was dragged aside while another attendant took his place. The next minutes dissolved into pressure, fire, shouted instructions, and the metallic taste of blood. Then a cry rose above everything. Thin, furious, alive. A second infant was placed beside the first. The scarred alpha stared at him as if the world had split open. The first child carried a scent like cedar after rain. The second smelled of lightning on stone. Each fragrance belonged to one of the brothers. A memory surfaced from somewhere that was not mine. A book opened beneath a hospital breakroom lamp. A villainous male Omega, named Lucian Ashford, twin alpha heirs, a birth surrounded by scandal. In one final sentence I had read before the accident that ended my former life. Lucian Ashford died before dawn, despised by both fathers of his children. A faint blue light appeared above the bed. Numbers formed inside it. 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 42 seconds. The countdown had begun. The numbers above the bed kept falling. 11 hours, 58 minutes, and 17 seconds. No one else reacted. Everett Blackwood stood beside me with the first infant in his arms, his posture rigid, as though holding something so small required more courage than facing an army. Across the room, Gideon had taken the second child from the nurse. His scarred brow drew together when the baby quieted against his chest. Neither brother looked prepared for tenderness. Yet the children recognized them. The first turned toward Everett whenever he spoke. The second curled his fingers into Gideon's shirt and refused to release it. I remember their names from the novel. Everett, the elder heir. Gideon, the commander who had once loved Lucian before hatred replaced whatever had existed between them. The memories inside this body gave me no clear explanation. Only fragments surfaced, Gideon's hand against Lucian's cheek, Everett placing a coat around narrow shoulders. Then both men watching from a courtroom while Lucian was condemned. "Give him back," I whispered. Gideon's head lifted. "You are in no condition to issue orders. They should stay together." A muscle moved along his jaw. "Concern looks unnatural on you. The accusation should not have hurt." It did. Not because I cared what he thought of me, but because grief rose from somewhere beneath my own emotions. Lucian's body remembered this man's contempt. Everett approached the bed. "The children will be examined. Together." His expression remained unreadable. "Why?" "Because newborn twins regulate each other. Their breathing, temperature, stress response." I glanced between the babies. Separating them now could make recovery harder. A nurse gave a cautious nod. "That is correct, my lord." Everett placed the first infant beside his brother. Their cries stopped almost immediately. Gideon stared at me as if kindness were another weapon. The physician who had nearly injected me had been removed, but guards now stood at every door. A new medical team entered carrying sealed equipment. They moved with precise efficiency, collecting blood from me, the infants, and both alphas. Everett watched every vial. "No substitutions," he said. The senior healer bowed. "The results will be verified by 3 laboratories." Gideon folded his arms. "We already know what he wants them to say." I was too exhausted to defend myself. "And what exactly do I want?" His eyes sharpened. "To bind us to you." The words opened another memory. A banquet hall. Lucian standing beneath crystal lights while whispers spread through the crowd. A forged bonding certificate displayed before the council. Gideon tearing it in half. Everett saying, "You will never use our names again." "I don't want either of you," I said. Silence followed. Gideon's face changed first. Not softened. Never that, but startled, as if Lucian had never spoken such words. Everett studied me more carefully. The countdown hovered beyond his shoulder. 10 hours, 43 minutes, and 9 seconds. A maid carried the infants to a warmed cradle beside the bed. 2 minutes later, Everett's son began a fuss. Cedar drifted through the room, delicate yet unmistakable. Everett went still. Then Gideon's child answered with a faint pulse of rain-soaked stone. The brothers exchanged a glance. Pheromones in newborns should not have been this distinct. The senior healer returned with a tablet. His complexion had lost all color. "My lords, the preliminary genetic analysis is complete." Gideon took one step forward. "Speak." "The children are dizygotic twins." Everett's voice lowered. "That is not unusual." "No, my lord. But their paternal markers are." My fingers tightened around the blanket. The healer swallowed. "The first child is biologically linked to Lord Everett. The second is biologically linked to Lord Gideon." Gideon stared at him. "Impossible." Every sample was tested twice. One Omega cannot conceive children by 2 alpha brothers in the same cycle. Everett said, "Under natural conditions, no." The phrase settled over us. Under natural conditions. A servant entered carrying Lucian's medical file. Several pages had been torn away. Others were stained with chemicals that made the ink difficult to read. Everett took the folder and turned each sheet slowly. Then he stopped. "What is this?" Near the bottom of an old surgical report, beneath a line someone had tried to erase, for words remained visible. Subjects survived previous implantation. A sudden ache spread behind my eyes. White walls, leather restraints, a needle entering Lucian's abdomen. Someone saying, "The first attempt failed, but the vessel remains viable." I gripped the mattress as nausea rose. The countdown dropped beneath 10 hours. And somewhere inside the stolen memories of this body, a child began to cry. The room assigned to Lucian was not a bedroom. It was a cage disguised with silk. The walls were paneled in pale wood, the curtains embroidered with silver vines, and the bed large enough for a royal suite. Yet the door locked from the outside. Iron had been hidden beneath the decorative frame. The windows open only a few inches. Someone had spent a fortune making imprisonment look elegant. I sat near the fire with Rowan and Ellis, sleeping in a shared cradle beside me. Their breathing had finally settled into the same rhythm. Every few minutes, one tiny hand moved toward the other, searching through the blankets until their fingers touched. The sight steadied me. The blue countdown above the mantel did not. 8 hours, 21 minutes, and 46 seconds. A nurse had wrapped my abdomen and ordered rest, but my mind would not stop. The erased surgical record remained lodged beneath every thought. Previous implantation. There had been another child, or another attempt. A soft click sounded behind me. Gideon entered without knocking. He had changed out of his blood-stained uniform, though the tension in his shoulders remained. His gaze went first to the cradle, then to me. "You should be asleep. You should learn what doors are for." His mouth tightened. For a moment, I expected anger. Instead, he crossed the room and checked both infants. With surprising care, placing 2 fingers beneath Ellis's nose to feel his breath. The gesture stirred something inside this body. Warm sunlight over a training courtyard. Gideon laughing as Lucian tied a bandage around his hand. A promise spoken beneath an archway covered in summer roses. I came back to myself with my nails digging into the chair. Gideon noticed. "What did you remember?" The question was too immediate. Why assume I remembered anything? Because you make that face whenever the past reaches you. I looked away. "Then you have been watching closely." I watched threats. The answer carried more bitterness than conviction. Before I could respond, Everett appeared in the doorway. He held the damaged medical file beneath one arm and a ring in his gloved hand. A narrow band of black metal, cracked through the center. "We found this behind the wardrobe," he said. The moment he placed it on the table, pain burst behind my eyes. A corridor washed in moonlight. Lucian running barefoot, one hand over his stomach. A voice behind him ordering the guards to stop him. Then Everett, younger and less guarded, pushing open a side gate. "Go, Lucian." Before I changed my mind, the vision shifted. The same ring struck a marble floor. Gideon stood nearby, fury and heartbreak twisting his features. "You used us both." Lucian reached for him. I did not know. Gideon stepped back as if the touch would burn. The memory vanished. I opened my eyes to find both brothers staring at me. "You helped him escape," I said to Everett. His expression hardened. "Once. And you believed he betrayed you," I said to Gideon. His face closed completely. "He did. Did you see it happen?" "I saw enough." That was not my question. The fire snapped between us. Everett placed the file beside the ring. We searched the room. He crossed to the northern wall and pressed a section of carved molding. A narrow panel released with a dull scrape. Inside lay dozens of folded letters. Some were sealed. Others had been torn open and returned. Every envelope carried Everett's name, Gideon's name, or both. Gideon moved first. He pulled one free and broke the wax. His eyes traveled across the page. The color drained from his face. "What does it say?" I asked. He did not answer. Everett took another letter. His control lasted longer, but only barely. His thumb stopped over a line written in faded ink. A nurse helped me into a wheeled recovery chair. From there, I approached them despite the ache in my body. The handwriting was elegant at first, then increasingly uneven. I never forged the bond certificate. They're giving me something that steals entire days. "Please ask Gideon where he found the poison." Do not trust Dr. Pierce. The final letter had never been sealed. There was only one sentence. If someone named Adrian wakes inside me, tell him I am sorry. My breath left me. Neither alpha spoke. The countdown continued. 7 hours, 59 minutes, and 11 seconds. Lucian had known I was coming. Which chapter did you die in? The question was spoken so softly that, for one impossible moment, I thought I had imagined it. Julian Harrow stood beside the cradle with a bouquet of white hellebores resting in his arms. He looked exactly as the novel had described him, graceful, refined, almost fragile, with pale gold hair arranged neatly at his nape and a face that encouraged people to lower their voices around him. The supposed victim, the beloved Omega, everyone believed Lucian had tried to poison. Everett and Gideon had left only minutes earlier to confront Dr. Pierce. 2 guards remained beyond the locked door, but Julian had dismissed the nurse with a courteous smile and a request for privacy. Now that smile remained. The warmth behind it did not. I shifted closer to Rowan and Ellis. What did you say? Julian placed the flowers on the table. Do not make me repeat myself, Adrian. Hearing my real name from his mouth changed the room. The fires seemed to recede. The ticking clock grew louder. Even the sleeping babies felt suddenly too exposed. Above Julian's shoulder, the countdown continued. 6 hours, 44 minutes, and 3 seconds. You read the letter, I said. No, then Lucian told you. He never knew enough to tell anyone. Julian removed one glove finger by finger. His movements were unhurried, almost ceremonial. I recognized your expression in the delivery chamber, he continued. The confusion. The desperate way you searched for rules that no longer applied. I wore the same expression once. A pulse of unease moved through me. You transmigrated. His lips curved faintly. That is what we called it in our world. I came from a place with traffic lights, hospitals, electric trains, and stories people consumed because their own lives felt insufficient. His gaze lowered to the twins. I woke here 11 years ago. The novel had never mentioned that. Julian had been written as gentle and blameless, the moral center of the Blackwood tragedy. He was rescued from Lucian's schemes, protected by both Alpha brothers, and eventually became the person who restored peace to the estate. You knew the plot, I said. At first. The moment I changed something, it began changing me back. He crossed toward the mirror near the wardrobe. His reflection smiled a fraction later than he did. My skin tightened. Julian noticed. You saw it. The reflection lifted one hand. Julian's real hand remained at his side. The story corrects deviations, he said. Small ones disappear. Larger ones are punished. What did you change? I tried to save Lucian. The answer struck harder than an accusation. A brief image surfaced inside me. Julian kneeling beside Lucian in a greenhouse, pressing a packet into his hand. Lucian staring at him with suspicion. Footsteps approaching. Julian whispering, "Run before they make you forget again." Then the memory twisted. Julian's face changed. His fingers closed around Lucian's throat. I jerked away from him. You helped him. Once. And afterward, I learned. His composure cracked at the edges. I learned that mercy does not survive repetition. He told me about the first cycle. Lucian died during childbirth. One infant stopped breathing before sunrise. The second vanished in a Malcolm's laboratory. Gideon challenged the council and was executed. Everett inherited the estate, then destroyed himself from within. Julian died 3 years later. Then he woke again on the morning he first entered Blackwood Manor. The same conversations returned. The same meals were served. The same rain struck the windows. He tried warning Everett. Reset. He exposed Malcolm. Reset. He helped Lucian escape. Reset. How many times? I asked. Julian looked toward the mirror. Its surface showed a man far older than the one standing before me. I stopped counting after 30. The baby stirred. I moved between him and the cradle. So now you protect the original story. I protect the path that allows me to live longest. By letting Lucian die. By ensuring everyone reaches the role assigned to them. His voice sharpened. Lucian becomes the villain. The brothers despise him. The children are born. You should never have appeared. The countdown flashed. 6 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. A new line formed beneath it. Correction, phase initiated. The windows slammed shut. Every candle went out. Rowan began crying, followed by Ellis. Julian's face lost its calm. No, he whispered. It has never started this early. A dark mark spread beneath his collar, winding upward like spilled ink. He seized my wrist. You have broken too much too quickly. Pain burned across my skin. What happens now? His eyes met mine, no longer gentle, no longer composed, only terrified. The world begins removing its mistakes. The cradle was empty. For several seconds, my mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. The blankets still held the shallow impressions of 2 small bodies. Rowan's cap lay near the pillow. Ellis's knitted wrap had fallen across the floor. But neither child was there. A scream formed inside me and came out as a broken whisper. No, Julian released my wrist. The dark lines beneath his skin had stopped spreading, though they remained visible along his throat. His attention moved toward the sealed windows, then the fireplace, then the wardrobe, as if expecting the manor itself to answer. This is not part of the correction, he said. I reached the cradle and searched beneath the covers despite knowing how impossible that was. The sheets were warm. A trace of milk and cedar lingered in the fabric. They were here. I know. You were standing beside them. His expression hardened. I did not take them. The door burst. Inward. Gideon entered first, one hand on the hilt at his waist. Everett followed with 3 guards and Dr. Pierce between them. The physician's wrists were bound, his expensive coat torn at one shoulder. Gideon saw the cradle. Everything in him changed. Where are they? The command struck the room with enough force to rattle the glass. Julian flinched. I did not. They disappeared. Gideon crossed the distance in 2 strides and caught the front of my robe. Pain pulled through my abdomen, but I kept my footing. You expect me to believe that? Let him go, Everett said. He was alone with them. Julian was here. Gideon turned. Julian's face had already transformed into the sorrowful mask everyone trusted. I came to offer peace. Then the lamps failed. When they returned, the babies were gone. It was almost convincing. Almost. Everett looked at the windows. No forced entry. The guards heard nothing, one man reported. Gideon released me, though his hands remained clenched. Then someone inside this room helped. Dr. Pierce began to laugh. The sound was weak, wet, and entirely wrong. All of us faced him. You still think doors matter, he said. Everett stepped closer. Where are the children? Pierce tilted his head. Where they were always meant to go. A fresh number appeared above the fireplace. 4 hours, 31 minutes, and 22 seconds. Beneath it, the words changed. Air recovery in progress. I moved toward Pierce. What is the Dual-Heir Project? His amusement vanished. Everett's eyes narrowed. Gideon looked between us. Pierce said nothing. I continued. You implanted Lucian before. You erased his memory. You switched the medication during labor. You remember too much. I remember enough. His gaze traveled over my face with clinical interest. You are not the original consciousness. The guards shifted uneasily. Gideon stared at me. Everett did not. He had already suspected. Pierce smiled again. Fascinating. The vessel succeeded beyond expectation. I grabbed his sleeve. Where are my sons? A memory crashed through me before he answered. A stone stairway beneath the east wing. Lucian being carried downward while half-conscious. A circular chamber. 2 cradles carved into the floor. And Malcolm Blackwood, standing beside a door marked with twin wolves. I pulled away, breathless. Below the manor. Everett's focus sharpened. There are no lower chambers. There are beneath the old chapel. Pierce's face gave him away. Gideon drew his weapon. Take us there. We moved through the corridors at a pace my body could barely endure. Everett noticed my stagger and offered his arm. I ignored it. At the chapel, Gideon tore aside the altar cloth. Beneath the stone platform was a metal ring set into the floor. He pulled. Nothing happened. Everett joined him. Together, the brothers lifted the hidden door. A passage opened beneath us. The air rising from it smelled of dust, iron, and newborn fear. Everett asked permission before lifting me and carrying me down the narrow stairway. Every movement sent pressure through my weakened muscles, but the memory guided us. Left at the fork, down past the sealed arch, through the corridor lined with Blackwood portraits whose eyes had been scratched away. At the final landing, we found a chamber glowing with amber symbols. One cradle stood in the center. Rowan slept inside it. Only Rowan. Gideon searched the shadows. Where is Ellis? A speaker hidden in the wall crackled. Malcolm's voice filled the chamber. One heir opens the gate, he said. The other completes the bloodline. A distant infant cried behind the sealed door. Ellis. Gideon rushed forward, but the markings ignited beneath his boots. Invisible pressure threw him backward. Everett caught him before his head struck the floor. On the wall, letters emerged through the stone. Access requires gestational vessel. I stepped toward the circle. Everett seized my hand. You just gave birth. My child is behind that door. It may kill you. I looked at the countdown. 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Then at Rowan, sleeping beneath the machinery built to use him. Lucian spent his life being treated like a container, I said. I will not let them turn his sons into one. Everett lowered me carefully into the circle after I confirmed the decision was mine. The symbols climbed my legs like living fire, and somewhere beyond the wall, Ellis stopped crying. The symbols did not burn my skin. They entered it. Light moved beneath the surface of my legs, climbed my spine, and gathered around my heart with the pressure of a second pulse. The chamber vanished beneath a flood of borrowed memory. Lucian was 17. He stood in the same underground room, wearing a thin white gown, his wrists marked by restraints. Malcolm circled him while Dr. Pierce adjusted a machine beside the stone platform. You were not chosen because you are weak, Malcolm said. You were chosen because your body refuses to break. Lucian lifted his head. His face was younger, but the defiance in his eyes was unmistakable. I will never give you an heir. Malcolm smiled. You misunderstand. Your consent is not required. The memory changed. Needles. Bitter medicine forced between clenched teeth. Weeks disappearing without explanation. A first implantation that ended in blood and silence. Lucian waking alone while someone removed a tiny bracelet from the bedside table before he could read the name engraved on it. Grief struck me so sharply that my knees gave way. Adrian. Everett's voice reached me from far away. I opened my eyes. He stood at the edge of the circle, unable to cross. Gideon had lifted Rowan from the central cradle and held him close, shielding the infant's face from the rising glow. The sealed door ahead of me began to open. Stone dragged against stone. Beyond it waited a laboratory far larger than the chamber behind us. Rows of glass containers lined the walls. Most were empty. Some held blankets, medical tags, or rusted monitoring wires. Names had been etched beneath them, then scratched away. Omega subjects. Not one experiment. Dozens. Everett saw them and went completely still. Gideon's face twisted with revulsion. Our family did this. Our family funded it, Everett answered. His voice sounded stripped down to bone. At the center of the laboratory, Ellis rested inside a transparent cradle connected to 2 silver conduits. Malcolm stood beside him in ceremonial black, one hand resting on the control panel. You arrived sooner than expected, he said. I stepped through the doorway. What happened to the others? Malcolm glanced toward the containers. Insufficient compatibility. They were people. They were possibilities. Gideon moved toward him, but the floor reacted to his scent. Metal bands snapped upward and locked around his ankles. Everett caught Rowan before Gideon fell. Malcolm watched them with mild disappointment. Twin alphas. Extraordinary lineage. Unstable judgment. His gaze returned to me. But the vessel exceeded every projection. I have a name. Yes. Several, apparently. He knew. Not merely that I was different, but that Lucian had brought me here. Malcolm touched the panel. The light inside Ellis's cradle intensified. His small body arched, and a weak sound escaped him. I crossed the room before thought could stop me. The markings beneath my skin reacted, spreading across my arms in branching gold. Release him. You cannot command this system. The conduits began drawing something from Ellis. Pheromones, blood resonance, perhaps life itself. The air filled with the scent of rain, striking hot stone. Gideon roared and tore one leg free, skin ripping beneath the metal restraint. Everett handed Rowan to a guard, then removed the Blackwood signet from his finger. Malcolm noticed. "What are you doing?" Everett looked at the containers, the erased names, the evidence of lives reduced to failed entries. Then he placed the ring on the floor and crushed it beneath his heel. "I'm into my family's claim." For the first time, Malcolm's composure fractured. "You cannot renounce blood. I can renounce what was built with it." The machinery surged. A new memory opened inside me. Lucian kneeling in this laboratory months earlier, drawing a circle with his own blood, whispering into darkness. Not a spell, a plea. Find someone who knows how to keep a heart beating. Find someone who will love them before knowing who they belong to. Find someone better than me. The truth settled into place. Lucian had not summoned a hero. He had searched across world for a stranger trained to save lives. He had chosen me because at the moment of his death, I had been trying to pull a child from a burning car. The accident had not brought me here. His final act had. I faced the cradle and placed both hands against the glass. "I'm not better than you," I whispered. "I'm only here because you refused to stop fighting." The symbols answered. Every light in the laboratory turned toward me. Malcolm stepped back. "What have you done?" The glass around Ellis cracked. The countdown above us changed. 1 hour, 47 minutes, and 12 seconds. Then another message appeared beneath it. Vessel authority transferred. Pain exploded through my skull. My hands moved without permission. My lungs drew breath to speak words I had never learned. And from somewhere deep inside this body, Lucian opened his eyes. Lucian spoke through my mouth. "Open every chamber." The voice was mine, yet another cadence moved beneath it, measured, exhausted, carrying years of pain that had never been allowed to become anger. Malcolm stepped toward the control panel. Everett reached him first. He struck his uncle once, hard enough to send him across the floor. Gideon tore free of the remaining restraint, blood running down his boot, and drove his shoulder into the laboratory door before it could seal. The glass around Ellis shattered outward. I caught my son against my chest. He was breathing. That was all that mattered. For 3 seconds, relief held me upright. Then the walls began to move. Panels withdrew across the laboratory, revealing passages descending farther beneath the estate. Iron gates lined each corridor. Behind them stood men with hollow faces, thin wrists, and faded identification marks pressed into their skin. Omegas. Some shielded their eyes from the brightness. Others did not react at all. Everett stared at them. How many? Dr. Pierce, dragged in by the guards, avoided his gaze. Gideon seized him by the collar. Answer. 43 living subjects. The words emptied the room of sound. Everett looked toward Malcolm, who was struggling to rise. "You knew." Malcolm wiped blood from his mouth. "I preserved our future. You buried people beneath our home. I secured the Blackwood line." Everett turned away from him. The dismissal carried more finality than rage. "Release them," he ordered. The guards hesitated. They had served the council longer than either brother. Obedience had been trained into them through rank, inheritance, and fear. Everett removed the remaining Blackwood crest from his coat and dropped it beside the crushed signet. "I'm no longer asking as your heir," he said. "I am asking as the man who will testify against every person involved." One guard unlocked the nearest gate. Then another followed. Soon metal bolts were sliding back throughout the passageways. Gideon approached me slowly. His injured leg dragged with each step. "I believed what they showed me," he said. Ellis stirred beneath my chin. "That does not erase what you did." "I know. You called Lucian a liar when he could barely remember his own name." His eyes lowered. "I know. You left him here." The word struck whatever remained of his defenses. Gideon did not kneel. He did not beg. Instead, he removed his weapon and placed it on the ground between us. "Tell me what restitution looks like." Everett came to stand beside him, Rowan secured in his arms. For the first time, neither Alpha tried to direct me. So I gave them terms. Every Omega leaves tonight. Every record is copied. Every family involved is named publicly. The estate funds their treatment and relocation. Everett nodded once. Done. You surrender authority over Rowan and Ellis. His grip shifted protectively around the infant, but he answered without delay. They're yours to raise. They're not possessions. A shadow of shame crossed his face. No, they are not. I looked at Gideon. You will not use guilt as a reason to claim me. I will not. And neither of you will speak of forgiveness until Lucian's name is cleared. Gideon met my gaze. Then we begin there. An alarm sounded from the western corridor. Armed council soldiers poured through the lower entrance. Everett handed Rowan to me and turned toward the approaching force. Take the survivors through the service tunnel, he told Gideon. You cannot hold them alone. I do not need to hold them. I need to delay them. Gideon drew the weapon from the floor. I am staying. No. Everett looked at me rather. Then his brother. Adrian decides the route. The choice landed in my hands. Not a command. Not a test. Trust. Gideon takes the freed Omegas, I said. Everett destroys the records they can use to repeat the project. I carry the children. Both men obeyed. A guard pushed my recovery chair while I held the children close. Around us, the others moved through smoke, gunfire, and the pounding machinery of a collapsing system. Near the tunnel entrance, a soldier aimed at me. Gideon stepped into the shot. His body jerked. He remained standing long enough to disarm the attacker before collapsing against the wall. I reached him with Ellis in one arm. The bullet passed through, he said through clenched teeth. Go. I pressed fabric against the wound. I am done leaving people behind. Together, we entered the tunnel. Everett joined us minutes later, ash streaking his face. Behind him, the laboratory burned. We reached the forest before dawn. The survivors gathered beneath the trees while healers treated Gideon. I counted the freed Omegas. I checked my sons. Rowan was with Everett. My arms held only a folded blanket. Ellis was gone. A message appeared on the cloth in silver ink. Bring Lucian to the original grave. Come alone. At the bottom, Julian had signed his name. The grave was empty. The medical team brought me in a covered recovery carriage to the northern ridge, where the forest thinned around a circle of blackthorn trees. Everett carried me across the final stretch only after I gave permission. No headstone marked the site, only a rectangle of disturbed earth and a rusted chain half buried beneath wet leaves. Julian stood at the far end of the clearing. Ellis was in his arms. My son was awake, his small face turned toward Julian's chest, one fist pressed beneath his chin. He looked unharmed. That did not slow the violence rising inside me. Give him to me. Julian's gaze shifted toward the trees behind my back. You came alone? Yes. It was not entirely true. Everett and Gideon had followed at a distance after refusing to let me disappear into the woods without protection. But for once, they had respected the boundary I gave them. I could no longer smell either Alpha nearby. Julian looked disappointed. You should not trust them. I do not. Not yet. Then you're already making the same mistake. He stepped beside the open grave. This is where Lucian died in the first cycle. The words pulled a reaction from the body I inhabited. My ribs tightened. My knees weakened. Beneath the scent of damp soil, I caught traces of medicine and fear that could not still exist after so many years. Julian noticed. He remembers. He is not a weapon you can use. He is the lock. A pale circle appeared beneath his feet. Symbols spread through the clearing, threading between roots and stones. The pattern matched the laboratory markings, though these were older, carved into the land itself. Ellis whimpered. I moved forward. Julian tightened his hold. One more step, and the reset begins. You said Lucian's death causes it. His despair causes it. The confession came with no triumph. Julian looked exhausted. The project did not invent the loop. It awakened something already buried beneath this bloodline. When the gestational vessel dies, believing his children are lost, time folds backward. The ritual begins again. Malcolm learned to exploit it, but he never controlled it. How do you stop it? I cannot. You mean you never tried without sacrificing Lucian? His face hardened. I tried everything. No, you tried everything that still let you remain the chosen Omega afterward. The accusation landed. For the first time, Julian's composure failed completely. I died for him, he said. I was imprisoned for him. I watched Gideon bleed out in 6 different lifetimes. I watched Everett burn this estate with himself inside it. I held Lucian while he begged me to save children who vanished every time I did. His voice shook. Do you know what repetition does to love? It turns fear into justification. It teaches survival. It taught you to become part of the machine. The circle brightened. Above us, the countdown returned. 0 hours, 18 minutes, and 42 seconds. Julian looked toward it with naked dread. The story requires closure. No, the curse requires hopelessness. A memory surfaced. Lucian beneath these. Same trees, blood soaking the front of his gown. One empty blanket in his arms. Malcolm's men surrounding him. Everett and Gideon arriving too late. Lucian had not died from his wounds. He had died believing both children were gone, and no one had ever believed him. That was the wound the world kept reopening. I stepped into the circle. Julian recoiled. I warned you. You said the reset begins when Lucian dies without hope. The symbols climb my boots. So he will not. I placed one hand over my heart. Lucian, I know you can hear me. The forest went still. Images moved behind my eyes. Locked rooms, erased days, unanswered letters, 2 newborns he had fought to carry into the world. You were not cruel, I said. You were cornered. The earth beneath the grave trembled. You were not weak. You survived long enough to find me. A translucent figure appeared across from Julian. Lucian looked exactly like the body reflected in mirrors, yet sorrow had made him seem older. He stared at Ellis first, then at me. I failed them, he whispered. No, you brought someone who could continue. Julian's grip loosened. Ellis began reaching toward Lucian's spirit. Branches cracked behind us. Everett and Gideon entered the clearing. Neither rushed forward. Everett carried Rowan against his chest. Gideon leaned on a blood-stained cane, his injury reopening beneath the bandage. They stopped outside the circle. We found the records, Everett said. Every name will be restored. Gideon looked directly at Lucian. I believed lies because they gave me permission to hate you. His voice broke, but he did not look away. I cannot undo what I did. I can only make certain no one buries the truth again. Lucian stared at them for a long moment. Then he turned to Julian. You do not have to keep dying either. Julian's face crumpled. I do not know how to live without the ending. Then live without knowing. He surrendered Ellis to me. The instant my son touched my chest, the circle fractured. Lines of light split across the clearing. The countdown froze at 7 seconds. The grave collapsed inward. A sound like breaking glass rolled through the forest. Julian screamed as the mark. Beneath his collar dissolved. Everett crossed the shattered boundary and placed Rowan beside his brother in my arms. Gideon stood at my back, close enough to catch me, far enough not to claim the right. The timer vanished. For the first time, no new words replaced it. Lucian's spirit began to fade. I reached toward him. What happens now? He smiled. Small, uncertain, free. Now, he said, the story has to ask you. 3 months after the grave opened, the world did not reset. That was how I knew we had won. There were no vanished memories, no familiar mornings repeating themselves, no unseen hand forcing people back into their assigned roles. Time moved forward with all the uncertainty Julian had feared and all the possibility Lucian had died trying to protect. The Blackwood estate no longer belonged to the Blackwoods. Everett signed away the family's private holdings and placed the remaining wealth into a restitution fund for the Omegas imprisoned beneath the manor. The laboratories were dismantled stone by stone. Their records were copied, authenticated, and delivered to every governing house connected to the project. 43 survivors received their names back. Malcolm was tried publicly. Dr. Pierce testified in exchange for a reduced sentence, though no bargains spared him from hearing each victim describe what had been taken from them. The council members who financed the experiments lost their titles, properties, and protection. Lucian Ashford's name was cleared before the entire realm. I attended the declaration with Rowan and Ellis in my arms. The official read every accusation once used against him, followed by the evidence proving each one false. Forged certificates, altered medical reports, manufactured testimony, drugs designed to fracture memory. When the last charge was erased, something inside my chest finally loosened. Not my grief, his. I still carried Lucian's memories, but they no longer arrived like wounds. They had become part of the life he entrusted to me. Gideon laughing beneath summer roses, Everett opening a gate in the night, 2 heartbeats echoing through a body everyone treated as property. I kept his name beside mine. Adrian. Lucian Ashford. Not because I had become him, because neither of us deserved to disappear. Julian survived the collapse of the curse. Without the resets, he seemed uncertain how to inhabit ordinary days. He expected punishment in every silence and disaster behind every choice. He left the capital under supervision and began helping identify other hidden facilities. I did not forgive him. I also did not condemn him to remain the person repetition had created. For the first time in decades, his next decision belonged only to him. Everett and Gideon did not ask me to return to the manor. There was no manor left to return to. I chose a cedar house near the northern forest, close enough to the city for medical work and far enough that Rowan and Ellis could grow without guards outside every window. Everett arrived most mornings before sunrise. He learned to prepare bottles, fold blankets, and identify which crime meant hunger and which meant Ellis had stolen Rowan's toy again. His expensive coats were soon marked with milk, crushed berries, and tiny handprints. He never complained. Gideon came in the evenings after training the new protection unit for displaced Omegas. His leg healed slowly, leaving him with a permanent limp he treated as a reminder rather than a tragedy. He told the twins elaborate adventure stories in which corrupt councils were defeated by babies armed with wooden spoons. They adored him. Neither brother called himself my mate. Neither spoke as though fatherhood granted ownership over me. They waited, not passively and not without hope, but with the patience required to rebuild something their earlier choices had destroyed. One spring evening, we sat beneath the tree outside the house while Rowan attempted his first steps between Everett's hands and mine. Ellis remained in Gideon's lap, furious that his brother had achieved something first. Rowan stumbled. Everett caught him before he reached the grass, then looked at me for permission before placing our son back in my arms. Such a small gesture. Once, he would have assumed the right. Now he asked without words. I nodded. Across the garden, Gideon was making Ellis laugh by pretending to lose an argument with a bird. The sound rose through the branches, bright and unguarded. I do not know what we become, Everett said. I watched Rowan curl his fingers around mine, just as he had done in the delivery room. Neither do I. Does that frighten you? Once, uncertainty had meant death. Now it meant freedom. No, I said. It means no one has written it for us. At dusk, we carried the children inside together. There was no ceremony, no binding order, no prophecy demanding that I choose one brother over the other. There were only 2 men learning how to love without possession, 2 children born from cruelty yet raised in safety, and 1 life shared by a soul who survived and a soul who refused to let him die alone. That night, Rowan slept against Everett's shoulder. Ellis clutched Gideon's thumb. I stood by the window and looked toward the distant ridge where Lucian's grave had once waited for him. Wildflowers covered it now. I had entered this world as a villain scheduled to die. I remained as a father, a healer, and a man no prophecy had the right to erase. For the first time, the future was unwritten, and it was ours.